Hey, I know it's been like forever since I last made a video. My bad. I really didn't mean for it to be that long. I've just been in this god-awful rut where I couldn't really seem to finish any projects I started. And honestly, this wasn't really even the video I intended to come back with. Not that anyone's really expecting me to come back, I understand that. I just felt like I needed to come back, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping this video will help me get back into the swing of things. This video happens to be long overdue. Not really for your guys' sake, but mine. I've been trying to figure out a way to make a video that would culminate in me coming out because, I don't know, I just felt like it was necessary. But it kept adding these extra pressures to those videos that they really didn't need. So I'm hoping that this will, I don't know, maybe alleviate that. This video will most likely be a lot of rambling, so if you don't want that, I promise I'll make another video by the end of the summer that isn't that. And if you're staying, thank you, I appreciate it. So without further ado, let's start this video. Also, hi, I'm Denoyle, and I hope you like my cute little model. I'm still working out the kinks. She's a little janky. I just needed something to have because I don't want to show my face. Be nice to her. She's trying, you know? Gender has always been a weird construct to me. I'm not saying that from a young age I had an innate sense of transness fused into my bones or anything. Honestly, it was far from that. I just never liked the exclusivity that came from gender. It was always so limiting and annoying. I don't think you were able to tell I was going to grow up to be a girl when I was younger. By all intents and purposes, I was a pretty normal cis boy. I didn't really get the neon flashing blue, pink, and white lights that other trans people got. I didn't grow up trying to wear my mom's clothes. I didn't claim to want to be a girl. My favorite color wasn't even pink. It was yellow and green. Nothing about my childhood really screamed trans, at least on the outside. Growing up, I always preferred hanging out with girls my age over boys. I still do now. Some of my closest friends growing up were girls. I even remember this one time when I was sleeping over at my friend's house. I ended up spending hours playing some Monster High game with his sister over hanging out with him. Honestly, looking back, I still don't really know how that happened, but it's something I always look back on. It's that preference towards girls my age that started my weird relationship with gender. When you're younger, you don't really understand the differences between boys and girls. To a little kid, they might as well be the same thing. I was the same way to an extent. But I was forced very quickly to learn that boys and girls can't hang out in the same way. I distinctly remember wanting to have a sleepover with a female friend of mine, but her dad said that I wasn't allowed to because I was a boy. That really fucked me up when I was younger. I was so upset that her dad wouldn't let me sleep over with her. It's not like I was gonna do anything. I was like 8. I don't even think I fully understood why I couldn't do that at the time, but it definitely was the first time I came to understand any sort of big difference between genders, and I hated it. I hated that I couldn't hang out with girls the way I did with boys. I hated that there was any difference at all, and most of all, I started to hate that I was born a boy at all. I obviously didn't put much stock into those emotions at the time because, like I said, I was 8. But I definitely internalized them, and they would proceed to influence most of my emotions from then on. Not much happened gender-wise until puberty. Around puberty was when I started fantasizing about wearing women's clothing and waking up as a girl, to the point where I lost hours of my day thinking about it. You know, normal cis boy things, obviously. Around that time also, I had entered the cycle of growing out my hair and cutting it. It was a weird deal I had with my parents that I would chop it off in the summer, and I did that for multiple years. I honestly don't really know why I decided to grow out my hair in the first place when I was younger. I guess I preferred it long at the time. I mean, I still do, but I don't know, it was just an odd choice, I feel like. And on that note, I don't really know why I cut it during the summer, outside of it obviously being what my dad preferred. Around the time I started school, I would see posters to join Girl Scouts because they started a year earlier than Cub Scouts, and I remember asking my parents to join before being told that I would have to wait a year for Cub Scouts, which I did. In hindsight, it's really funny that I wanted to be in Girl Scouts, and even more funny that that feeling never really went away. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate Cub Scouts and eventually Boy Scouts by any means, but I always thought that the stuff Girl Scouts did was cool, and on top of that, I really wanted to sell cookies over popcorn. Either way, around 11 or so, I transitioned over to Boy Scouts. When I went to my first meeting, I was told by one of the older scouts that there were too many Dylans in the troop before he gave me the nickname Sam. I don't think I ever hated that name, but the humor also isn't lost on me that I accidentally gained a dead name by just existing, and that said dead name along with my real name were both gender neutral. So from that point on, there were two Dylans. Boy Scout Dylan, Sam, and everything else Dylan. In many ways, that split also highlighted my growing disconnect with other boys my age. In junior high, I started to learn a lot about myself. Mainly that I felt very different interacting with boys over girls. I mean, we knew this by now, but I started to realize this ever-growing feeling that when interacting with guys my age, I would instinctively put on this mask and enter a boy mode just to fake my way through a conversation. I always hated doing that because it felt so unnatural compared to being allowed to be much more effeminate around women. Also because I preferred to hang out with women, I would very quickly learn about women's issues, specifically everything to do with feeling unsafe around men and all that. Learning about many of those problems made me hate being born a guy all over again. I also grew incredibly self-aware of how I acted as to not freak people out. It's not like I was a very masculine or scary person. Far from it in my opinion, but I still grew to be very careful with how I interacted with other women, just to make sure that they felt as safe as possible. Honestly, it caused me to grow into much more of a timid person than I once was. It also caused me to get incredibly introspective and self-critical. The fear of freaking out women by just existing in the same space as them caused me to not only become extremely self-loathing, wishing I wasn't born a guy at all, but it also caused me to hang out more with guys because I was just scared of causing problems. One of the best things that came from junior high came from the fact that due to the electives I ended up taking, I wouldn't need to be taking a gym class for the rest of my school career, which honestly might have been the best thing to ever happen to me. I didn't have to contend with the changing rooms and specifically changing in front of others. I was elated to learn this because I had already been dreading changing in a locker room for a long time. The idea of changing in front of other people made me feel incredibly uncomfortable, mainly because I was so ashamed of my body by that point, but that's so much less of a dysphoria thing and more of a dysmorphia thing. That and growing up constantly being told that you're fat and gross to the point of internalizing it, but that isn't fully related to this video and you happen to not be my therapist. Either way, on top of growing up dysphoric around existing in a male body at all, I also grew to just despise how I looked in general. I hated taking pictures of myself. I hated looking in the mirror. I hated the idea of changing in front of people. I hated the idea of having my shirt off at all. All of this caused me to gain a mild hatred of swimming, so needless to say, I was pretty elated to learn I both didn't have to take a gym class and didn't have to swim in school. At the end of 7th grade, I joined my high school marching band. Specifically, I joined the color guard, and I would continue to do it for about 8 years on and off. And within those 8 years, I was always either the only boy in guard or the only one of 2. So needless to say, most of my time in guard was surrounded by girls. It was kind of like being the only male cheerleader, you know? And because I was typically the only boy in guard, I once again started gaining weird gender feelings, as any cis boy tends to gain. Whenever the entire marching band had to be split into boys and girls for whatever reason, I tended to be alone, since I was typically the only boy. I would always feel so out of place and wished I could just be with the rest of the guard girls. When we would need to change into our uniform, the entire guard would go together to do their makeup and all that, while I would be left alone to my own devices. And I would just have to suck it up, The worst parts were when we'd have to leave for competition or something, because we would be split into boy buses and girl buses. Everyone also had to sit in sections, so I typically would be in the back of a bus, alone. like I didn't really belong. Don't get me wrong, I loved having an entire bus seat to myself, but it still sucked to not be with the rest of the guard, you know? Also, while in color guard, we had these gendered uniforms for a short amount of time, and I always remembered preferring the girls' uniform over my own, for one reason or another, mainly because I always felt like I stood out like a sore thumb. We'll come back to these gendered uniforms later, so put a pin in them for now, alrighty? In between junior high and high school, I stopped cutting my hair every summer, just letting it grow out. I also joined a voice acting group thing for Homestuck, and I met some amazing people there. Side note, if any of you are watching, hi! Thank you for taking your time to watch this, and I love you all. Also, hit me up. I know I'm awful when it comes to communicating, but I adore all of you and think about you all from time to time. Anyways, while in this group, I was exposed to a lot of queer culture. Between that and many of my closest friends being somewhere in the community, I managed to learn a lot about queerness and, for the purposes of this video, about being trans. Obviously, I'd been exposed to the term before this, but I never fully understood what it meant. As I understood more and more about it, a certain thought would pop into my brain. What if you were trans? Before I immediately dismissed it into the dark recesses of my brain, never to be seen again. I mean, I couldn't be trans. I don't have dysphoria. Like, sure, I kinda wish I was born a girl, and if given the opportunity, I would switch my gender in a heartbeat, and sure, I adore wearing women's clothing, and I kinda wanna wear them, but that doesn't mean anything. I don't have dysphoria, so I can't be trans. Duh. This would be the start of what I have dubbed my Trans Imposter Syndrome arc, or my TISA for short. Yeah, that's what we're calling it. I grew convinced that I didn't have dysphoria, that I didn't experience enough discomfort to warrant transitioning, you know? That my feelings were completely normal. I would justify that I didn't have an ingrained sense of girlhood in my system, and besides, even if I was trans, it's not like I was pretty enough to even be a girl. Around this time, I really wanted to be considered pretty, or at the very least cute. I never understood why guys didn't like girls calling them cute. Looking back, I don't think I ever wanted to be considered handsome or anything masculine like that. I think I just adored the idea of being cute and pretty, and since I was nowhere near that, I grew immensely frustrated. I low-key grew envious of trans women, because in many ways, they were just like me, but they were pretty enough to pass. I didn't really know about HRT at the time, so that's on me. The fact that these women were so pretty kinda cemented the fact to me that I wasn't meant to be a girl, no matter how much I really wanted it. During the summer, I worked at a Christian retreat camp. I remember one night after work, me and a couple of friends were hanging around, and I said something along the lines of being willing to wear high heels. To me, it was obviously a joke of some variation, and to my knowledge, no one took it weirdly. Honestly, I didn't even think it was that weird of a comment to make until a little bit later. I was brought into my boss's office. He had asked me about the high heel comment, and I clarified that it was a joke, that I would never do that. And he essentially told me, good, because I would have to fire you if you were trans. Those weren't his exact words, but it was the intention behind it. This incident didn't really help with my trans imposter syndrome. My high school experience was a little abnormal to say the least. I essentially went to a Votech school part-time, so I would do all my core classes at the main high school for half the day, and complete the other half at my Votech school in my specific program. Specifically, I chose computer networking, though in my freshman year of high school they had us at Votech full-time, taking all those core classes there instead of on the main campus. The program I chose was very male-dominated, so half of my day would be spent in a classroom with a bunch of guys. Between slowly falling out of love with the program I chose and my already pretty uneasy feelings around men, I felt so out of place in that classroom. That unease never really went away also. So that didn't really help with my weird feelings around gender, and honestly, not being in the main high school cut me off from growing in the ways I feel like I should have. My only experience with other students my age were whoever went to Votech, either my major or my core classes. But in freshman year, those classes didn't switch up, so I had the same students for like 4 classes in a row, so I wasn't really exposed to that many new people, you know? That class was also half filled with rednecks, so I was a little uncomfy, you know? Nothing insane happened that year in terms of my transness. Nothing except, I don't know, I started getting into anime. That small decision to start watching anime has not only violently changed the course of my life and personality, but it also has done irreparable damage to my brainstem when it comes to my concept of gender. The amount of jealousy I gained for gender non-conforming characters and femboy characters was palpable. I so desperately wanted to be them, to be mistaken as a girl, to just be a girl. Honestly, with the amount of psychic damage anime has done to my psyche, I do fear what I would have been like if I discovered anime at a much younger age. Obviously, we'll never really know what it was like, but it is a little scary to think about. As I got into anime, I not only grew more fond of slice of life / romance anime, but I found myself relating to the female leads of said shows. Put a pin in this for now, specifically the pin we picked up and put in the color guard, because we're coming back to that. That year in color guard, my instructor grew tired of having to order gendered uniforms every year, so she had everyone wear the same uniform this year. And when I tell you that this might have been my trans awakening, I mean it. Everything else was precursor to this moment. That uniform she had me wear, it wasn't exactly androgynous. It was like this dress that opened up into a cape, and it was like my favorite thing in the world. I loved that dress so much. It was so pretty and so fun to wear, and if you don't know this about me, I love wearing dresses and skirts, and ever since I came out, it's all I live in. So, needless to say, wearing that dress did irreparable damage to my brain, to the point that I think about it at least once a month. Like I said, I loved that dress. I would spin around in it and everything. Though, I remember when we first got them, my one friend at the time, who was a trans man, he asked me to tell the instructor that I was uncomfortable with the outfit because it was too girly or something. Obviously the outfit was giving him dysphoria, but I don't think I fully processed that at the time. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I do remember refusing to because I just loved that outfit so much. In hindsight, I probably should have just sucked it up and helped him out, but at the moment I wasn't thinking about that. Around the time we had these outfits, I had long hair and a giant beard. So it's not like I was getting mistaken for a girl, not by a long shot, but I still got so giddy at the prospect of someone thinking I was a girl. Being mistaken for a girl was a concept I always got a little excited about. Even outside of guard, I would hope that people would do that. But with the guard being mainly girls, I always hoped that someone not paying attention would just mistake me, you know? One day, while I was wearing the dress, I borrowed one of the guard girl's hand fans to cover my beard. I also started talking in a high-pitched voice like this, to see if I could pass as a girl. Obviously, it was one big joke. I obviously wasn't a girl, so it wouldn't be like a little funny if someone thought I was, you know? That year, I'd also gotten to my first anime convention. It was an amazing experience, but the reason why this is relevant is because at one of the panels I visited, I was introduced to a certain martial artist who can switch gender upon getting splashed with water. The icon to many a trans girl, Ranma Satame. I didn't know about this anime until this panel, but upon learning of Ranma's gimmick, I grew in love with the concept. I still actually have never seen the original. I did watch the remake and I started reading the manga though. Despite never seeing the anime, Ranma kept me awake at night when I was younger. I would fantasize about being able to switch my gender on a whim like him. Needless to say, both of these experiences happening within the span of like a couple months really should have clued me into like anything. Like there was a giant neon sign at this point and I refused to acknowledge it. That year I had also started watching anime with my one friend. Whenever we picked up a new show, we would have this running bit of which character in the series is Dylan, but as an anime girl. Because there was always one character that acted very similar to me, and they were either always female or gender non-conforming. That, and they were always a little chaotic. Highlights included Minori from Toradora, Najimi from Komi Can't Communicate, and Toru from Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. Around this time, I would also notice that my voice naturally goes up a few octaves higher than normal when interacting with strangers, which I thought was really interesting. 2 years later, COVID hits and shuts everything down. Not for me though. I worked all throughout COVID. I ended up working for my friend's dad in a warehouse, and to pass the time, I would listen to a lot of video essays about random stuff. But I did end up learning a lot about transness in that time. Not like I was actually interested in it or anything, I just really liked learning, you know? I also remember this one time at the warehouse. There was a girl who I worked with, and she had mentioned something along the lines of a skirt with pockets in it, which sounded insane to me because I didn't know that was even possible at the time. So when I got home, I wanted to Google it, but I got really embarrassed over the idea of looking up skirt with pocket, because someone might think I'm trying to buy one or something. I was 17 at the time, by the way. I just need that to be known. Either way, I ended up looking it up in an incognito tab to make sure no one knew. All throughout high school, I had a really close friend. He's still my friend actually, and he's been with me through everything. I remember one time he had said he always has 2 best friends he considers. A girl best friend and a guy best friend. Then he told me that he doesn't know why, but he considered me his girl best friend, which was a little insane since I wasn't out or anything. But it made me really happy at the time for no reason. Since he was my closest friend, I would tell him everything, and while I didn't tell him verbatim that I wanted to be a girl quite yet, I would talk a lot about how different life would be if I was born a girl and all that. There was even this moment when we were in the car, and I guess we were talking about women's clothing being so much cooler than men's clothing, which it is. And I kept reiterating that if I were a girl, I'd wear that clothing in a heartbeat. And I kept going on and on about how life would be better if I was born a girl and how over it would be for everyone else. That I'd be able to rule the goddamn world if that were the case. In the process of making this video, I asked him when was the first time he was clued into the fact that I might have wanted to be a girl. And that was the memory, he told me. It should also be known that none of those phrases were isolated incidents. I would say stuff like that all the time because I truly believed I'd be a lot happier if I was born a girl, you know? After high school, I decided to go to college on a whim. Despite my house being around 30 minutes away, I still wanted to dorm for the experience, and so I did. There's this very vivid moment I have of college. I was talking to my first friend on campus, and I was talking about how much better life would be if I was born a girl. That whole song and dance, you know? And as I was saying all this as a funny hypothetical what if, you know, she just looked at me and said, "You can still be a girl." I, of course, started deflecting, and I say something along the lines of, "Oh, it was just a joke. I'm not actually trans. I'm just saying, imagine if I was born a girl." That interaction still sits with me to this day. It was the first time someone told me that I could be trans, that I have permission to transition. Up until that point, being trans felt like something other people are, not me. Other people are trans, other people have dysphoria, I don't. Sure, I would love to wake up one day as a girl, but I know it's not possible, so why would I bother? Honestly, transitioning never truly crossed my mind in all those years feeling shitty about myself because I guess I never realized it was something I was allowed to do. I know it sounds really stupid out loud, but that's truthfully how I thought about it. I rejected the idea of transitioning outright. Like I said, I wasn't trans, I just wanted to be a girl. And so I moved on. About 2 years into college, a certain anime came out that was at least partially responsible for giving me the courage to transition. And honestly, I don't think it's an anime that most people are expecting. It was Oshinoko. I watched the first episode and immediately fell in love with Ai like the rest of the world. She became my, well, for lack of a better word, my idol. I adored her and I so desperately wanted to be her. Everything about her resonated with me to the point where I believe that at least a little bit of my final decision to transition came from my idolization of her. I wanted to be pretty like her, I wanted her confidence, and I wanted people to look at me like they looked at her. I wanted to be her in such a deep, deep way. Up until this point, I had pushed aside most of my feelings of wanting to be a girl as a fruitless dream. One that I could never accomplish, you know? I never gave them any serious thoughts. That is, until I saw Ai. Something changed in me after that night. I still didn't realize I was trans, but I was gonna try to become pretty like her. Just like as a pretty boy instead of a pretty girl, you know? And A month later, I finally shaved my beard. It's funny. Oshinoko is actually what clued my roommate into the fact that I might be trans. We weren't living together quite yet, but I was at his house showing him Oshinoko, and according to him, I just kept saying how I wanted to be I. On top of that, he said that the way I talked about other women in media also clued him in, because I would do the same thing. I would say that I related to them and wanted to be them. When I shaved my beard, something changed in me. It was the first time in forever that I put effort into my appearance. Up until that point, I despised how I looked, and I knew I could never be cute like a girl no matter how hard I tried. I also have this awful personality thing where I won't try in something if I know I'm gonna fail. And I know that if I am trying in something, I'm giving it my all. It's why I half-ass a lot of things, and it's also why I go really hard on others, and I think it's why I never really tried to fuck with my appearance. Because part of me knew that I couldn't succeed. When I shaved, it was almost like me saying that I'm putting my all into this. After shaving my beard, I still didn't fully like how I looked, but I was going to try my best to appear as feminine as possible, which became a double-edged sword. On one hand, I started putting much more effort into my appearance, but on the other hand, I may have accidentally developed an eating disorder. Oops. I've always been on the larger side, and I hate it, but once again, I never really tried to fix it because I assumed I was never going to succeed. But since I'm already trying to fix the rest of my appearance, I started starving myself a little more, and may have developed a bad relationship with food. But yeah, I crave to be pretty, to be skinny, to just be a girl. I still didn't connect all of the dots quite yet, but we're on the right track. Around the time I shaved my beard, I had to go to my friend's graduation party. It was going to be the first time my friends saw me without a beard. I also made my hair look pretty. I braided it and everything. It's funny. That grad party was apparently the first time my friend had clocked me as trans. Shaving for the first time frustrated me a lot because it doesn't really shave properly. There's always a permanent shadow that always exists there, and it frustrates me when my face is any sort of prickly. I just wish it stayed completely smooth, like a girl, you know? The fact that shaving my beard didn't immediately make me look like a girl also frustrated me immensely. The fact that shaving my beard didn't immediately make me look like a girl also frustrated me immensely, and is also part of the reason I would constantly just let it grow back, because what's even the point, you know? Looking in the mirror grew more and more frustrating as time went on. Not that it wasn't already frustrating, but looking at it is worse when you start trying to change what you see. I still didn't know I was trans quite yet, I just knew I hated not being pretty, you know? By this point, I started renting a house right next to the school with my current roommate. I now had a place to call home semi-permanently. Near the end of my first semester of my junior year of college, I was closing up my current job. When I closed at work, I would typically find a video essay to play in the background, and that night was no different. I had found a video earlier that day that piqued my interest, and I saved it. That video's name was The Unsettled Trans Pipeline in Inside Mari. I saved it because it sounded like such an interesting topic. Little did I know that that video would change my life forever. After I finished the video, I put my headphones away because I needed to think, to reflect on everything I just listened to. I related to that video in ways I wasn't ready for. After finishing it, I knew what needed to be done, almost as if the final piece of the puzzle finally fell into place. I understood what I wanted, no, what I needed to do. I realized that I spent so much of my life denying and fighting the fact that I just wanted to be a girl. And I refused to deny it any longer. Don't get me wrong, I was terrified of what transitioning would mean. I mean, I barely even knew what pronouns I wanted to use. I just knew I couldn't live as a guy anymore and still be happy. So I started making plans. This all took place in December, and I had a doctor's appointment in January. I gave myself until then to figure it out. I don't know if this seems impulsive to you. Some could argue that I went about everything so fast, but for me it was the exact opposite. I spent my entire life denying this very obvious part of me. So the moment I was given an opportunity to fix everything, I jumped on it. I only told those closest to me that I was even thinking about this. About a week later, the color guard was holding a Secret Santa thing, and conveniently they had talked about everyone wearing a dress to it, including me. I jumped at the opportunity to wear a dress, and honestly, this was an amazing sign, like this was meant to be. So I went out, struggled to buy a dress because I was so nervous about someone saying something to me, and then I showed up to the party and rocked that dress. That January, I would also tell the doctor that I was thinking about transitioning, and they would start me on the path to start HRT. The next semester, I started playing around more with makeup and clothing. At the end of the semester that year, the club I ran was holding our annual huge event, and the last 2 years I wore a suit and tie. I didn't really need to dress formal, but it was just kind of a me choice. This year, I knew I wanted to wear a dress. Our theme that year was zombie apocalypse, so I wore this really cute gothic Lolita dress, and I loved it. I was so happy in it, and no one even batted an eye when I wore it. It was the first time I wore a dress in front of such a large crowd, so I was incredibly nervous. But I pulled it off. I remember at the start of June that year, my friend texted me Happy Pride Month, and I just stared at the message because it made me realize, oh yeah, I guess I am trans now. In August, I would finally start taking my hormones. In a lot of ways, my life has become so much more fun since transitioning. I'm able to wear cute dresses and skirts everywhere and have fun accessories and do my makeup. I get compliments all the time from friends now and even a few strangers. It will almost be a year since I've been on hormones, and that year has been some of my favorite moments in the world. I was given the best year in color guard where I got to be as feminine as I wanted. I got to cosplay Ayoshino, and I even got called pretty by a girl dressed as Jessica Rabbit. I even occasionally passed to random strangers. One time, I was about to walk into the men's bathroom when an older man was coming out. He took one look at me, then pointed toward the women's bathroom, telling me I was entering the wrong one. I can even look into a mirror now without hating it. Don't get me wrong, I still dislike my appearance, it's just gotten a little easier to manage, you know? My fashion sense has also greatly improved to the point where my fits are always called cute. I even have so much more confidence in myself now than ever before. At work, I appear very feminine to my coworkers despite me dressing very androgynously. I'm still referred to as a guy, but I also have been described as a femboy at work, which is a good step in the right direction, you know? And I can actually feel stuff that isn't just dejected numbness. Don't get me wrong, this hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows. In some ways, my dysphoria is worsened because I'm even more critical of my appearance than I ever have been. It hurts when I get referred to as a man. I get called sir a lot at work, and it frustrates the hell out of me, and I still get incredibly nervous deciding on which bathroom to use. And I spent a lot of this year jumping back and forth between pronouns, but despite all this, transitioning has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. I've grown so much as a person, and I will only continue to grow. Hi, thank you so much for watching and listening to me ramble. I know it probably wasn't all that interesting, but I'm glad you watched it and maybe you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I'm sorry. I promise I'll try to upload more interesting videos more often. Until then, have a great day and happy Pride Month. Huh? What do you... Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So it's no longer Pride Month? We're no longer in June? What the fuck are we in? July? What the fuck is a July? Uh-huh. Yeah, seems made up. So, anyways, you're telling me that the video about me coming to terms with me being trans far later than I should have is coming out far later than it should have? Huh. What are the odds? What was that? Oh. I'm still recording. Oh yeah. Look at that. I'll call you right back. So, I have just been informed that we are no longer in Pride Month. We are in something called a July. I don't know. Sounds pretty made up to me. So, yeah, I guess don't have a happy Pride Month. Have a happy July or something. I don't know. Goodbye. Have fun. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't die. I don't know. What the fuck am I supposed to do in July?